And we're back, and we're back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 4 of Not Another Podcast. So happy to have you joining us once again. Like usual, my name is Sipo. I'm joined with my two co-hosts, Ndima Silwana and Ramuz Msane. And today we are joined by our first guest, Musa Madala. I'd like to give him a warm welcome as he will be part of the Not Another Podcast family for the long time. This won't be the first time you hear his voice, and he brings a lot to the table. Comes from an entrepreneurial background, entrepreneurial family, so he has a lot of perspective to give on that. And we believe this will be another, what you call this, another fantastic episode where we talk and we dive deep into topics that we all care about and believe need our attention as the youth. So I'm going to give it over to our first guest right now, Musa, to just introduce himself and yeah, we'll just take it from there.
Cool. How's the talk?
How's it, brother?
How's it, man? How's it? I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. This is a really cool platform. I think it's important that young people start building platforms and communities to have dialogues about various things that happen in our society. And I'm really excited to be part of this. And yeah, congratulate you for taking the initiative to launch this. It's very exciting.
Thank you very
Yeah, so sure.
No worries, no worries, no worries. So I was going to give it over to Undima and Sunshine, but just before I do that, just to give us a background and some context as to who Musa Madala is, I'd like you just to tell us a bit about yourself. Tell the audience like what makes you such an interesting guest for Not Another Podcast, also as our first guest.
Okay. Okay, cool. Now, yeah, I'm Musa. So yeah, I'm from the Eastern Cape. I'm East London. So yeah, I'm not sure why I was picked as the first guest, but I mean, I'm still honored to be here and to have been chosen. But I think yeah, in terms of my background, I've done a lot of activities that relate to entrepreneurship, project management, strategy, and so yeah, I've got a dynamic experience when it comes to small businesses and building things from the ground up. And that's just something I'm passionate about and something I enjoy doing. So I studied, obviously went to Selborne College with you guys, which was a great experience. And then I moved over to Cape Town where I did my undergraduate and postgraduate. I think my postgrad was probably the best experience for me because I majored in entrepreneurship as a discipline. And I think that gave me, quite a theoretical and practical experience to the whole universe of entrepreneurship and what it means to be an entrepreneur. I met a lot of interesting people as well during that time, and yeah, I've really just been trying to position myself as an economically active individual who
Hmm.
is conscious about problems in his community, space, organization, and trying to tackle those problems and solving them through products and services. So that's literally been my vibe for the past few years. But I think, yeah, so what I've been involved in recently, I think I've spoken to you about this in the past, is an agri-tech startup that
Yeah.
I've co-founded and co-managing with a friend of mine from Limpopo and Toyando. And what we do there at Farmru, it's called Farmru, which stands for Farming in Rural Areas. And we are trying to build an IoT, or Internet of Things, hardware and software-based solution that's tailored for smallholder farmers in traditional communities and traditional authorities as well in low income areas, whether it's a rural area, township, peri-urban area. That's who we are trying to help. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. It hasn't been as easy as we thought it would be when we initially launched this project, I think 2018, 19. But we have been getting some traction in the past few years, which has been quite exciting. Yeah, just really just the ups and downs are the things that sort of give you that motivation to continue doing what you're doing. And I think for
Hmm.
me, it's something that's definitely been pushing me towards continuing with these kinds of initiatives. Farm is just one of the things that I'm involved in, but it's the main thing that I'm quite passionate about. And yeah, man, I'm keen to obviously have conversations about solving problems, starting businesses that solve problems, that have a social consciousness, that add value to communities, and yeah, anything that relates to that sort of thing.
Excellent, excellent intro. Yeah, so I think my first question would be just to address the floor would be what are some of the takeaways on your journey that you could share in terms of your experiences and the lessons you've learned along the way with Farmru and maybe your other ventures that you are involved in that you think people could use for their own experiences or yeah, for their own experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, yes, it's a lot. It's a lot of things. I'm not gonna lie. I could sit here a whole day giving you a list.
Just the
Um,
main points.
but I think the main point for me, I think as an entrepreneur or project manager, or a leader in an organization, is that you must always just have some form of like, because you make essentially the role. What I've come to understand is that the role of being an entrepreneur or being in an entrepreneurship based project is that you essentially just making decisions, and the quality of the decision that you make sort of influences the kind of outcome that you'll get in the end. So making informed decisions is possibly the most important aspect of being an entrepreneur, because you're taking risks at the same time. You're leaving your job to start something. When you do leave, a stable income to start something that's slightly more risky, with uncertainties attached to it. You need to be informed. You need to have the data. You need to have the projections in place. You need to have a business plan. You need to have made calls with your contacts. You need to have a customer base. Something needs to be constantly informing you and informing your decision. So the quality of decision is very important, and I think to obviously get that quality, that level of quality, is just time and effort. You need to put in the hours, doing the research, doing the homework, making sure that you've addressed all the blind spots and gray areas that you might come across. And speaking to people that have experience in whatever that you're doing, they can share
Hmm.
insights. So yeah, don't shortcut, make informed decisions. The quality of the decisions that you make ultimately affect the outcome, the desired outcome that you want to get or will get. So I think that's possibly been like the main lesson for me. And I think that for me came out of an experience of making many uninformed decisions and seeing that, oh, we weren't informed enough about this, and we should have sat down a bit more and obviously done our homework, or we weren't speaking to the right people. So maybe we should have been speaking to experts in the field that have walked this journey. We spoke to academics that have written about this problem on this topic. So I think that is the main thing. But I know that a lot of media and stuff will say, find a problem, and then to find the problem, obviously that's important. But yeah, even finding problems and finding the solution that you want to present, do your homework about that. Understand exactly what that problem is. What's forcing that problem? What's forcing that problem to be there? I'll give you an example. With Farmru, we initially thought that people in rural areas weren't farming because they just didn't want to, and we were obviously young at the time, and we didn't really know what we were going to come across. And we realized that many of the reasons why there isn't much farming activity in rural areas, um, in former homelands and all that, what is because a lot of the policies around those areas, which is like a macro thing, don't necessarily encourage agricultural activity, social grants, grant for this, grant for that, so those are systematic things that you can't necessarily change by yourself. If the society or the framework of the society is designed not to encourage people to be active, to be in the field every day, chances are it's not going to work. You might find that you're building a business only to find that, the system is not really enabling the business to prosper, and that does require homework and research.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, just making informed decisions, the quality of the decisions that you make affect the desired outcome. So yeah, I think
Mm.
that would possibly be my main takeaway or learning experience that I'd like to share.
Okay, that was very informative, deeply insightful. And I can assume that in terms of the decision making and the outcome you get, the feedback that you get in this type of space that you're in as an entrepreneur is almost instantaneous.
Yes, yes. I mean, it it
100%.
it it, it
Hmm.
never. I wouldn't say it correlates, or like it's like a linear thing, but it in some instances the feedback will arise in another activity, another process within the business that is from the initial query or thing that you were trying to understand or ask. So, I mean, so I'm trying to answer your question. So even if you do do the research and the stuff, you don't necessarily get the insights immediately. These things obviously happen over time. So I think it's also important for people in business and people wanting to start businesses to constantly writing things down on their experiences, like daily. This is what I did. This is who I spoke to. This is the outcome. So that when the feedback does arrive, in some instances, you can actually go back and say, man, this reminds me of something I was just struggling with. You go back to that date. Oh, it was this. Now the feedback that you receive is constructive. It's like, okay, I made that mistake. I
Mm,
got this feedback. This is the learning outcome. So stuff like that, because it doesn't happen. Entrepreneurship is very unstructured, and the structure that you get is structure that you build yourself or design yourself. And many entrepreneurs fail because it's not because they don't have the right business model or the right solution, but it's mostly around structure. They don't have finance and resources, they don't have this or that. It's important to try and build your own structure. And in terms of feedback that you're receiving, sometimes the feedback is coming in, but you're so busy doing other things that you're not actually paying attention to the feedback.
mm,
You get the feedback and you think someone's trying to criticize you, but they're actually just trying to help you. So
mm,
it's important to try and build a form of structure for yourself and to write things down on your experiences and lessons. Because if people's now coming to me and saying, Musa, this and that, my man, this sounds very familiar, I go back to that page. Oh, this is what I was struggling with on this day. This people's insight is actually informing this problem that I know about. So this is what I need to do. This is how I need to act on it. Yeah, it's I know that I'm not sure if I answered your question, but like yeah, they it works hand in hand, but
yeah.
it's not something that just happens automatically.
It's not an instantaneous thing as you might think. There is a process that happens, and sometimes the answers come a bit later than you had anticipated. And then the importance of also documenting everything down and making notes so that you have that point of reference when either things go wrong or things are moving in the way that you want them to move. And what else
Exactly.
did I?
Yeah.
You gave us the importance of note taking and feedback and the process of that. So what else would you say is important when you are in the space, like in terms of the people that you surround yourself with, also knowing who to talk to when you want to get certain resources? Like, what is the people aspect of business and how underrated or important is it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. The people aspect is depends, like it varies. I think from my experience, it depends on the industry that you're in. South Africa, I think we've even had this conversation before. South Africa is a very interpersonal society. So, sometimes just being that artisan who's, hardworking in his workshop won't get you the sale that you need. You need to speak to people, you need to network. South Africa is also framed in a word of mouth sort of society. If I'll just give an example. So if a new product comes into, like, let's say when Uber arrived, I wasn't confident to use Uber I, until I'd spoken to at least like 10 people. I kept saying, no, Uber works. I used it. This is the best way of, public transport. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So 10 guys have said they like Uber. It doesn't matter what Uber's obviously feeding me in the media. I need to speak to like 10 people to get that conviction that says, okay, now I want to use Uber, and I've been using Uber ever since. I'm sure you guys can relate to that as well. So South Africa is a very interpersonal society where you have to speak to people in order to understand certain things. And I just think that it's important to, that's speaking to people, obviously understand your limitations and the framework in which you're speaking to that person as well. I encourage networking sessions or like formal networking sessions where you'd attend a startup, for example, seminar where the like-minded people in a room with a presentation, and there's a tea and coffee session where you can exchange business cards and obviously speak um, to small businesses. I know banks in East London like to do business breakfasts, where they'll invite all their clients, all the banking people from the different departments into one room, and they'll have a public speaker who will speak about a topic that everyone can relate to. And then after that, there'll be networking sessions where people will actually exchange ideas, exchange network. So in that context, even as a business owner or an entrepreneur, I feel safe because it's structured. There's people that are speaking the same thing with similarity. They're in similar industries. So I think, obviously have that aspect of speaking to people, and it's important. but also the framing of that must also just be, you must just try and safeguard against that, because you don't want to be speaking to the wrong people as well, where you obviously networking, but you actually networking with people that are involved in criminal activities, and then they start targeting your business because you're sharing sensitive information with them. So yeah, so South Africa, I'd say in South Africa, it's important to have, interpersonal skills are very important, and yeah, business is about communication with Africa. Whereas in other societies, like in America, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he'll invent Facebook in his room as a communication software system, and then he doesn't have to speak to people. He just built that. Obviously, he got his word of mouth around Harvard, but then it blows up and becomes the social networking platform that everyone's using. So I think it varies with sectors and industries and countries and societies. But from my experience, South Africa is a very communications, interpersonal, peer-to-peer sort of society.
100%. And I believe Raz wanted to ask something, but that is a very insightful thing you just said, because networking is very key, and who you know ultimately decides the profitability or the failure of your business. So I'll just hand it over to Raz, and then Ndima can also share some of his points and questions that he'd like to ask.
Actually, I was actually very inspired by everything that Damos was saying. So through everything, I actually wanted to ask him one thing. Like where do you get the guts to decide that, you know what, I'm going to take the business route in life and I'm not necessarily going to go fully the 9 to 5, and with all the risks and challenges, and because starting up a business is quite challenging. What gave you that hope? Because most people, I mean, people who work 9 to 5 till they retire. People are scared to start businesses. Even people who have resources to actually start businesses are scared. So I just want to know, man, what made you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to move in this direction regardless of what happens in the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think the main one for me was the postgraduate that I did. So I think I was in third year, and I wasn't sure and everyone, I think, in our final year they were getting internships and they were going into graduate programs. And I had done an internship at a company in Woodstock in Cape Town called FCB Africa. And yeah, it was fine, but I didn't really enjoy the whole, I mean, I enjoyed obviously coming into work, speaking to people, meeting clients, but there's just something that I wanted. Like, I wanted more out of like life, and I wanted to do more. And and at the time I had a lot of energy. So I felt like I had a lot of energy, so I was like, I might as well just get into like a business. But then, after speaking to people and just getting insights, and I think I spoke to one of my lecturers, and he advised me to at least do a qualification in entrepreneurship, a postgraduate, and then at least try and make a decision after having experienced that, if this is something I want to continue doing. And so I did do the postgraduate diploma in management, specializing in entrepreneurship at the University of Cape Town, which was very challenging. I'm not going to lie. It's possibly the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. Not necessarily it being hard, but the amount of like workload that they just push on you and the pressure that they put you under, and you start realizing the importance of managing your time, your finances, the decisions that you make as well, because you have very limited resources in a business environment, so you need to constantly be making the right decisions all the time. So I think put under pressure, and in this postgraduate, we had to sort of run a business throughout the year. So we had to start a business, come up with a concept, a problem, build a business plan around it, and then launch it. And we had to sort of find problems within the university that needed solving of some sort, and we could basically build a business case out of that. So so basically we did that, and we came up with a disposable toilet seat cover business, which was, sorry, man, a disposable toilet seat cover product that we manufacture in Cape Town, and then we built a business around that product, where public toilets at the University of Cape Town weren't necessarily being, the hygiene levels were just bad, and we also didn't want to become a cleaning company, so we're like, we want to do something cool that people are gonna like. So we built like a hygiene cover sort of pack that people can have in their bags or their purses, and that they can place on the toilet, and it's flushable as well. So once you use it, you'll flush it and it disappears. And we actually won. Suzanne Ackerman, she was at the time, she was the head of transformation at Pick and Pay Holdings, Raymond Ackerman's daughter. And we won the most socially conscious or most innovative award at the exhibition. She was very impressed, and we, had preliminary conversations with her saying she wants to put these things into their stores. This is cool. Is it SABS approved? So I think for me that was the nudge that said, okay, now there's something here. I could actually do this and make a living out of it. Yeah. So I think in a nutshell, obviously, don't just leave your job because you're 9 to 5 as well. You are learning something because after completing my studies at UCT, I was very selective about the companies that I wanted to work for. So I ended up working for a private bank in Joburg. I won't mention the name. And that on its own was an eye-opening experience. I saw a different kind of business there. Wow. I saw experience entrepreneurs, international and local. I met some people there. So it's like so I think the more you learn and the more information that you get, the more confidence that obviously builds in you. And now you're going to be saying, okay, cool. Now I know what to do. I'm confident enough, I can at least try this out and see where it goes. If it doesn't work out, I still have some time to come back into corporate and obviously build a life in corporate. But yeah, I think the more you try and just at least inform and formalize these experiences to give you enough confidence to actually take that step to say now, okay, I'm giving myself 3 years to try this out. I probably won't be the most sociable guy. My girlfriend's probably going to break up with me because I don't have a constant income. My car repayment, I probably won't be consistent on it because I've got a big invoice in March, but in April, May, June, there's nothing coming in. Those are the realities that you have to face in business. So, but you get those insights and those learnings through experience. And the more you try and inform yourself with that, outside of everything that I did at UCT, in my own time, I do online courses for free online courses on entrepreneurship, on small businesses, on marketing, on this. Constantly just building my certification so that I can be confident enough to say, okay, now it's time for me to actually take that leap of faith and get into business. But I haven't done that much. I know guys that have really taken some serious risks because I sort of left corporate to join an existing family business, and I just took my skill sets into that because I felt that I needed to add value there. That's something I wanted to do. But there was obviously a safety net that I had. Other people have literally taken risks and actually started things and they've succeeded and some have failed. And, it's worth to also have conversations with them, and to understand, what conviction did you have to actually let everything go and just go full on, build a skincare brand, build an app, Ted, so my friend, the farmer guy, he left corporate. Didn't have a safety net. He left corporate. Went back to his rural community, which is Chafube, which is in Toyando, and he built a device from scratch. And he used competitions to basically give him that traction in terms of getting grant funding, getting non-financial support from institutions and like incubators. And then that's how he, obviously built his experience at farm. He didn't have like a family business to fall back on. He had to do it himself. Like he had to make it happen himself. And that experience for him, that in between the point of success and the point of him trying things, it wasn't easy. And a lot of his friends are like, come, dude, like I just bought a GTI. You were in class with me. Just send me your CV. I'll get you a job. Like, I've got an apartment in Rosebank. I'm a news cafe on a Friday. When are you sitting at home building devices? So, and it's like, hey, that pressure, pressure's like, hey, man, let me just leave this. It's massive pressure. But it's working out for him now. So it varies with different people, but I think the most important thing is just to constantly have as much information as you can, as experience as you can, to give you that confidence to say, okay, now I can actually make that step and not be afraid.
Yeah, that leap of faith is very important. Also, taking calculated risks. I think that's the one thing I've gathered here is that you don't just dive into something without weighing the pros and cons and your own strengths and weaknesses regarding to that. I know Ndimo has some questions he'd like to ask, so I'll give it over to him right now.
First off, welcome to the show, bro. So I remember you mentioned something that has to do with policies, some of the government policies that you feel like have been getting in the way of you sort of making certain moves and in business. I just want to ask, can you go in a bit more depth as to how these policies or some of these okay, let's just say policies. How do some of these policies get in the way of you and other entrepreneurs doing business? And how do you maneuver those obstacles? And, how do you handle it? And what would you advise other up and coming businessmen and women about how they can manage and what they can do in spite of all this red tape and excessive government policy, etc.?
Yeah, the policy one is a tough one. South Africa has a lot of red tape. And
Mm,
yeah, I think, and what the red tape does is that it prohibits innovation from occurring. Now, you'll find a problem, you'll come up with an idea, and you
mm,
will obviously build a rationale around that idea, and you'll innovate, and you'll solve that problem through innovation, and you'll patent your idea, and then your innovation is registered as an innovation. So now there's a certain process or something in the system that was lagging, and then your thing came in and it solved that. But South Africa has a lot of red tape, and I'm not too
mm,
sure why it's like that, and I don't want to comment too much on that. But just based off my experience, working with Farmru, was that we initially we had a fully fledged system. I mean, Farmers evolved in different ways, and mostly because of policy. Originally, we just wanted to provide a service to farmers and then charge them for that service or charge the government for that service. But we realized that the state doesn't necessarily want this kind of solution yet. For them, they still want to give farmers seeds. They don't really want these innovations coming in, and it's scary because now these innovations in the private sector are occurring. It's not like something that's not occurring elsewhere. So in the private sector, in the commercial farming space, these technologies and devices, the adoption rate is high. Things are happening there. I mean, there's the two guys that went to Stellenbosch that started a company called Aerobotics, and they raised over 100 million rand in the second year of operation from NASPA's lab. So they were doing very well, and it's publicized in the media. And I've never met them, but I'm just saying. So there's a lot of scope for addressing inefficiencies in the sector. But that's the private sector. Now come to the public sector. A lot of the lands in rural areas are governed by either the Department of Rural Development or governed by traditional authorities, where a chief or a king will sort of oversee, the curatorship of that land or that area. And you'll find that even the activities within the government aren't necessarily interlinked. So we were saying, okay, obviously we're Farmru, we want to come in with the technology into this area, but for these people to obviously start using a Farmru device, they need to open a business account so that they can pay us. So we'd say, okay, let's speak to someone in the business space, so an organization or a multilateral or a government institution that says, "Oh, can you help these people register businesses so that they can start adopting technologies, and obviously have bank accounts and have profiles and all that." And even between those two areas or spaces, major disparities. The government department and that department don't speak to each other. Like, they're not
mm.
linked. But I mean, I think things are getting better now. Things are obviously getting there. So yeah, there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of regulation around um, certain things from occurring. And I think we've obviously been able to pivot, which is something I'm really proud of. We've been able to pivot, and if Farmer, when we initially started, we wanted to obviously build it as a SaaS solution, so as a solution where people can subscribe and then they use it over time and they pay monthly installments. But now we've positioned it to become an original brand manufacturer. We want to become an original brand manufacturer. So we want to manufacture our own devices in South Africa and sell physical units to a farmer and then have the software as a back end thing. Because we realize that if we don't own the hardware aspect of the value chain, the user experience of the farmer might not be the same. So we'll get another device from, let's say, like HP, who will supply the hardware for the device, and then we come in with the software. But then HP's hardware is not really speaking with our so I think, you just need to find ways of just pivoting and finding your own unique strategies to basically addressing any red tape or any setback you might see as a potential risk from basically building that growth. But yeah, man, I do encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to register on these these platforms, formal platforms, so like an incubator or like a platform where SMMEs are connecting constantly, because those policy challenges and those systematic things are discussed in those forums, and strategies of like pivoting are suggested, or they're spoken about, or you meet people that are facing the same thing, and they'll find ways of obviously pivoting against that in an ethical and legal way. So I think also just building community around yourself and whatever you're doing, because a lot of the insights that we've gained is also through us building a community. We've built a community of people where we met guys who were building tracking systems and we're building alarm systems, and they were saying, no man, just build your own hardware. Like, we build alarms. I mean, look at your house, there's an alarm system there. That's hardware that we've patented that. So you can do that. It's allowed. You can do that. And these alarm companies and tracking companies, they own their own value chain. They've got a hardware, they've got a software, they've got a client, and you just take the same model and you can apply it in your context, which is agriculture. So that's something you can do. So building a community helps you as well. So it helps the pivots, the quality of the pivot as well, because you don't want to pivot and then deploy capital and then things just don't work out. Now you've lost money, you've lost your reputation, you've lost your time. So yeah, it's important to just pivot, but also just be aware of the system that you're operating in or working in. But I think things are getting better in South Africa policy wise. But I just think things are obviously going to take time. It's not something that's that's going to happen overnight. I also encourage people to look at these transformation incentives and opportunities as well. Looking up at CEDA, there's a incubator. I think it's under the Department of Small Business. There's a lot of financial, non-financial support that they give to entrepreneurs, and there's a CEDA office in each district or each region that you can go in and ask questions and get advice and speak to an expert, speak to a legal person, a finance person, compliance person, an HR person for free. Those services are out there. You obviously need to do your homework and obviously take the initiative. And the CEDAs will come across the same questions. Like, listen, I'm in my area, I've got an idea, but people in my community aren't farming. They're just sitting down and doing it. So a CEDA expert can also give you that advice and say, have you thought of this? Have you tried this approach? Have you tried marketing a product like this? Or, well, every year there's this that occurs. Stuff like that, I'd say, is important so that you can just shape the quality of that pivot.
Brilliant. And
100%.
just to, sorry, Ox, just one more point. I'm glad that you really went in depth with the whole policy issue, and I like that there really seems to be a lot of growth. Like as much as there are difficulties and the red tape, I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of real growth happening on the ground and a lot of business innovation. But what would you say is the biggest challenge on the ground level? Not in terms of policies, but like when it comes to working with other people and working with other people who want to start businesses. What would you say is the hardest obstacle that you have to try and overcome right now, or that you deal with on a daily?
It's access to capital. That's the main one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's access to
Mm,
capital. Yeah, that's the one that's quite a serious. Yeah, that's a conversation starter for most people. Is being
mm,
funded, because these funding institutions will, they'll ask you for so many things that you don't have. So that demotivates you sometimes, because funding institutions want to see a track record as well, because they're taking a risk. If you're going to be borrowing money from the bank, and the bank is they have their own scorecards and criteria that they use to mitigate against risk, because finance is not something that just comes easily. So they also need to prevent any losses. So yeah, I think access to funding is possibly like the main thing. Um, and maybe, and it depends, it varies in industry. So some industries, funding isn't necessarily a problem because there's so much track record in the field. It's a proven case study. There's possibly a business license that you've been granted to obviously procure or have the service in an area. So let's say you want to open a fuel station in an area. You've got your license, you've got your business plan, you've got your projections. There's a needs or demands or feasibility study that's been done. The bank can see the brands that are involved. So this is a reputable oil company. You will be supplied. People will come. They'll probably be more motivated to give you the funding because it's something that they can relate to or they can reference easily. and it's less of a risk because of the amount of people that are operating, retail spaces. An example is fuel retail. But for like an IoT device, small farmer, that's a riskier one. It's like, how are we gonna get paid? Okay, let's look at our like references, like how many times have we funded people that have come with these business plans? What's the model here? Who's the client? How often do they get paid? There's a lot of questions that get asked. So I feel like if access to funding can be improved, where if you're like a youth and you qualify for a certain criteria of funding because you're young and have idea and you're motivated and you meet the necessary checks and balances, you get granted funding. That's something that I think will make things easier because chances are if you're a young person, you don't have a family yet, you're starting out, you just left university or college, and you obviously are still willing to learn. So if you'll get mentors, you can attend mentorship programs, and you can obviously be well equipped to be funded. Whereas if it's someone who's much older, which is not a bad thing, but the older you get, the more responsibilities that are attached to you. So now you're old and you want to start a business, but then you have kids who need to. There's responsibilities in your life. He's back at home. You don't have as much time as you did when you were young.
You have a
So
lot more to lose, yeah.
you have a lot more to lose. So I think, yeah, access to funding is a main barrier from people actually starting out. But I think things are getting better. I think tech is also enabling. I've seen some entrepreneurs really do well in the funding space. They've been able to access a lot of grant funding, um, which there's a group of guys that I met the one a few years ago. These guys will just go around competitions, just like pitching their idea, and they just get this grant funding, and then they use that grant funding to build like a resource base or capital base, and then they pitch this thing to like commercial banks. So like there's ways of like various ways of like tackling the problem, but from a systematic view, I think the main barrier is funding. People aren't funded, so they're not willing to venture out and ask family members for money. I mean, the books always say ask your family members for money, but I mean the reality of asking family member for money when
Yeah,
things don't work.
highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Especially with money they don't know will return and how much they will get in that return. So it's really funny that you asked about family. Because
But the books
already
always
you
say
know
that.
there's,
The books always say ask your family members.
yeah, like that's good in theory, but like in reality, it's like your family low-key doesn't even support you with this business. Now you're asking them for money. Come on.
Bruh.
But I like that you touched on the value chain and the importance of manufacturing your own product because that gives you ownership in terms of means of production.
Hmm.
And that is something you can forever own in terms of your own business. That's something that you'll always have access to as a resource to keep creating, and it cuts out the middleman in terms of outsourcing. And I like that you also spoke about tech and innovation because that segues right into our next topic, which is artificial intelligence, guys. So we all know people have polarizing opinions when it comes to artificial intelligence, AI, but one thing is for sure is that it's no longer science fiction. It's shaping how we live, how we work, and how we relate to each other right now. And we know that from TikTok algorithms to ChatGPT to facial recognition, AI is everywhere, and most of us interact with it without even realizing it. And the real question is, are we really ready for the societal shift AI is bringing? What do you guys think of that?
You know, it's interesting because I think we're already seeing a lot of very strong results so early because most AI in the public space has only really been sort of in public use for like the past few years, 3, 4, 5, maybe years, and we're already seeing huge leaps in what AI can do. A lot of it is good, a lot of it is very, very bad. So and I don't even know if we as a society are ready because we're already seeing, for example, the level of sophistication that we see in fake AI videos, for example. So, like, there'll be a video of a person speaking and they're conveying like information about a specific topic. And it's so hyper realistic to the point where you have to look very, very closely to realize that no, this is an AI generated video. And now that's just one person. That's me saying, well, I can at least spot something off about this to say, bah, this is not real. But for many, many other people who aren't as well versed or who maybe are just aren't you don't have as sharp of an eye. How do we know that people won't start believing propaganda or like just misinformation simply because they saw a video online of this person who's actually AI generated speaking about something that may not even be true? So it's very interesting. It's very promising in different ways, but at the same time, it's scary because it's like we've seen how people behave on the internet now. What's gonna happen now when we start seeing bots, which aren't real people, in like comment sections, pitting people against each other, like sort of proposing information that isn't true, etc. So it's a very dangerous space, I think. But at the very same time, it's very, very good for the growth of tech and how people can participate in the economy and how AI can make people's lives easier. But at the same time, we're also seeing examples like kids over relying on AI because it's like ChatGPT, for example. So we're seeing people bypassing the hard work that comes with thinking and figuring things out and critical thinking and just going, let me just type this in ChatGPT and they'll give me an answer or they'll give me an essay. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least, as far as I can tell.
It's quite a lot, and you bring up valid
Mm.
points in terms of the main concern from a societal point of view, because what people mostly are scared of when it comes to AI is the fact that it will replace humanity in a sense. Like, we've already seen that it's replacing some jobs in some industries, and the fact that you brought up ChatGPT, I'll bring up an example when I was at a job interview for a certain post, right, as an analyst, and they asked me about any new apps or platforms that I introduced to my coworkers to improve productivity, and then I brought up ChatGPT, and the room went silent, right? The room went silent, and then the first question one of the ladies asked was, "Is this thing going to take away our jobs?" And I had to explain to her that no, ChatGPT isn't there yet. It's a tool that you can use to supplement your current job to help you improve your productivity. It takes away most of the legwork that you would usually put in to help you focus more on the tasks that are more important. So, in terms of the concerns that you brought up, what would you say are some of the benefits that you've used personally in terms of your interaction with AI, whether it's on the internet or outside?
I think when it comes to AI, I'll move with Utandira in the sense of there's good things about AI, there's also bad things about AI. Number one, if you look at the AI machines that are created for people in old age homes, to keep them company in the system here and there. That's a good thing. People who've lost their legs get AI machines made to make sure they can walk and all of that. That's good. I mean, that's assisting someone who couldn't walk to be able to walk. I see they're also integrating it into court systems now. And you're speaking about ChatGPT. However, I think and it's like an ancient problem, this problem between science, humanity, religion, and God, and all of that. It's always been an ancient problem where there's been a fight between trying to make systems which can be identical to human beings. And in this case, I think what we should look at is more of regulating this AI thing, because I think for the good parts and where it does assist, because I was looking, they were saying the US it will lead to about the loss of 7 million jobs, but in turn it's also going to create about 7.2 million jobs. So on the sense of jobs, because people always look at it like, oh, AI's coming, we're going to lose jobs. It's not fully like that, because it also creates different types of jobs. All right. So it is a kind of like a level playing field. But I just have a problem when it comes to it interfering with humans, with scientists trying to make sure, because I was watching a video where they're trying their best to make AIs that can actually interact with humans, where you can sit down with a robot and the robot will talk with you and have a full conversation and can cry and do everything that a human being does. Look, that brings risk. I mean, what if I know it's a funny thing to say, but what if those robots, or you have a fight with that robot, it doesn't want to listen to you anymore, and then it revolts against you, and then all these robots then do terrorism against you? How are you going to stop that? Because how do you shift that? Because now they've got to that human level of thinking. So I think that it should just be regulated where it's used, how it's used, and I think ultimately it's a good thing because it's going to lead to innovation in the human space. But yeah,
You bring up a very important point in terms of who gets to control the AI, because right now, as we can see, it's the big players. We have a small handful of tech giants, mainly in the US and China, that dominate the game. And that means they get to set the rules, define the priorities, and decide what gets funded or built. When we're talking about who gets to control the AI, we're also
Mm,
talking about the power imbalance. Like, if only a few billionaires or governments control AI, then the AI, what does that do? It reflects their own interests, you know? So, what does that mean for workers? What does that mean for smaller countries or ordinary people who don't have that power? So, it raises those kind of questions. And I'd like to get
mm,
your point of view in terms of that, Musa, and also Ndima, when it comes to like what Uraz talks about in terms of regulation, who gets to control the AI. What do you guys think of that?
I'm not sure, but I mean, I think that point will come when I actually think we
mm,
are at that point though. When technologies, AI and technology are growing at an exponential rate, and faster than we are even prepared for as a society. And I think once AI starts replacing human labor at scale, um, I think regulators might have to get involved because, yeah, there will be a massive structural shift when it comes to employment. I think when it comes to that, but in terms of it making, like what you're saying, supplementing the productivity, the amount of work that a person is received or a task that they need to achieve. If you look at it in that way, it's obviously something that will help. But when AI becomes a shift towards massive unemployment, when I mean, we've already seen it now where you'll get to a point of sale. I think some retailers do it where there's no need for an assistant at the till, where you can just pay, you can check out by yourself. Some retailers have implemented this where you can just scan your products and put in your own like bags of products or groceries into a plastic bag and then walk out of the shop. There's no need for
mm,
a human assistance. So that's a massive risk in terms of the amount of jobs that activity on its own, the amount of employment that gets created around that in South Africa. So regulators obviously have to get involved in terms of managing that transition. Um, it can't happen in a dramatic way where a massive retailer wants to cut costs and they obviously implement this massive technology that doesn't involve human interaction or activity, and now people are unemployed. So I think that there does have to be a way of managing that replacement. But it's
mm,
scary because AI is just it's happening so exponentially, and the algorithms are just improving daily, minute by minute, that you actually don't know. I don't think the regulators will even have like they won't be they won't also they will also struggle to catch up to the rate in which
mm.
things are just changing.
Exactly. What's your take, Ndima?
I was about to say,
Yeah.
almost raised a very important point about how AI is going to essentially replace a lot of people in quote unquote unskilled labor, or basically minimum wage jobs like cashiers and packers, etc. So I think in countries where, in more developed countries like the United States, etc., where that wouldn't be as big of an issue because they've managed to diversify their economy more. So there are more, I don't want to say high paying, but there are more well paying jobs to go around in a country like the US compared to a country like South Africa, because we have millions more people who rely on jobs like that. The impact will be much more lopsided in our country because, like I said, we have way more people who rely on those jobs, like being a cashier, packing groceries, etc. So it raises an interesting question of, and Umusa mentioned this, it's that the faster AI grows, the more we'll have to try and implement policies that are going to regulate it. But then now comes in the question, and we mentioned this earlier about regulation in this country, it's like, can we trust this government to lay down the groundwork for effective policies when we already know that this government is over regulating us already? So it's like, where is the gray area for us? Because we know that there are other countries that are able to have a fair amount of regulation without overdoing it. They don't suffocate the economy, but they understand that there are certain policies that they need to protect workers' rights and protect wages, etc. But when you have an example like us, where our government is essentially suffocating the economy and it's not allowing it to breathe and to do its thing, where is the gray area for us? If we start participating as a country in this new shift of AI and tech, how are we going to trust our governments to lay the groundwork to do the right amount of regulation without snuffing out the potential before it even begins? So it's a double-edged sword for us in particular, because as much as AI will create new jobs and it will feed into this whole new industry that we barely even understand yet, we as a country still have millions of people who we can't afford to lay off. Engineers, etc. You name them, all the different kinds of low skill labor jobs or the minimum wage jobs. We as a country, we know we can't afford to lose that many jobs. So what do we do then? What's the next step for us? What's the next smart step?
Quick one, Danira. Just to ask, maybe on the floor, to the point that Musa was mentioning. So next semester, I have to choose majoring between, well, there's a few majors, but I was given two where there's a lack of students in that space. So it was more banking and AI. So they're saying obviously people in South Africa are not fully equipped with AI, and the legal space is not really yet fully equipped to deal with AI. So going to what Musa was saying, that this is growing on a daily, and we are, but by the time maybe everything is fully integrated into society, we'll still be trying to make laws and regulations to try regulate it. Do you think South Africa is not maybe perhaps taking this AI thing that serious, or they looking at it in a sense of, okay, we'll deal with it as each problem comes, or situations arise? Because if we have to backtrack to create laws, I feel like that's being reactive. We're not being proactive, because the reality is we are in a digital space. We've been living in the digital era, and AI is in the space. Even institutions, you go to varsities, many varsities are complaining about students using ChatGPT to not do things ethically in exams or whatever it is. So are we behind? Are we taking it serious? Do we step up a bit? I don't know.
I think there's a lot more we can do in terms of taking initiative with AI. And I will say that we are low key being reactive, ne? Because like you mentioned, the danger of students using ChatGPT for their research and their thesis. There's been such an influx of cases where there's been accusations of plagiarism and whatnot, that not necessarily government, but I'll also put the academic sector, I'll also hold them to account to this, because you have to devise ways on regulating what is going on in your university in terms of when new technologies come to the forefront. And we've seen the impact and the ease of how ChatGPT has made researching and writing essays so accessible to everyone, that the threat of critical thinking and original thought is slowly diminishing. And that also brings a question of ethics in AI. Like, who decides what's ethical when it comes to artificial intelligence? Who says that, okay, what the machine is doing is fair or not? And also,
Mm,
when we look at AI from a South African or African perspective, right? You know that, like, most data sets, sorry, that are used to train AI come from a narrow slice of the world, like often like Western English speaking and male dominated sources. That means that cultures, languages, or lived experiences outside that bubble can get misinterpreted or erased. And we also know that if we want AI to serve the population fairly, then our data sets must reflect like the South African culture and everyone else who relates to our point of view in the world. So what do you guys think in terms of AI being more Afrocentric, reflecting more of an African perspective, being able to interpret our home languages and all that?
very interesting question. It's a good question, but like it goes back to the fact that AI is still so new, just in general. to the point where I don't think anyone knows yet how it's going to, how it's going to reflect or how compatible it can be with specific cultures. And that's why I'm saying we need to step into this new venture so carefully because, and as you guys have said, it's learning at such an
Mm-hmm.
exponential rate. It's improve or it's being improved at such an exponential rate
Yeah.
where we don't even know like what we don't know yet. There's so much to unpack, but at the same time, I think because what if we understand AI now, we know that AI is simply just software that is extremely good at learning and taking data and extrapolating it and trying to be as accurate as it can be with that data. But we have seen examples that AI isn't always reliable. It can be wrong, which ironically kind of makes it more human because no human being knows everything. Humans are wrong all the time. But at what point does AI, or how much longer is it going to be before AI itself becomes essentially perfect, where it takes data and gives you extremely accurate information? And when it gets to that point, I think we need to start asking ourselves, are we not now at that point where we are no longer relevant? Because it's already become superior to us at that point. Not that it's there now, but I mean, whether this happens tomorrow or in 10 years' time, at that point, AI will have surpassed us in terms of thinking, in terms of being able to be accurate. So, what then do we do with that information? With that revelation that okay, we've made this thing and we're stepping into this whole new field that is unexplored by most people. But now that we have it and now that it's so accurate, what do we do with it? Where do we fit in this picture? And do we have anything to fear at that point? Because I think right now it's important for people to understand that as advanced as AI is, it doesn't think, technically speaking, like you think. It just takes information and I'm not an expert on this, but what I understand is that AI has access to a lot of data and it takes that data and depending on what kind of use you require of it, it will give you that framework as accurately as it can. But it's still flawed. So just to get back to your point, Ox, I genuinely don't know because this is still so new to us. We need to figure this thing out first before we try and, ask ourselves that question of where does it fit culturally speaking, like into society. I think we just need to wait it out and see for now.
Yeah, I like what you said about that because, as we can all see, this discussion has brought up a lot more questions than answers,
Hmm.
and we're all still in the speculative phase as to where this technology will go and what it will bring us. And yeah, I think we just to answer your question a bit from a more African perspective, I think we as Africans are more than capable of developing our own data sets, developing our own intellectual property, and we have the capacity to produce more skilled workers in these type of industries who can come up with their own innovations. But we need all stakeholders on the same page because we need for academia to be producing more engineers, more data analysts, people who can thingy, what you call this, people who can play an active role and produce the technology that we want to see as Africans that reflect our own realities. And it can't only just come from the West and more affluent countries. It's something that we all need to partake in because at the end of the day, we don't know how far this technology will go, and it's up to us to play a role in that. And speaking of Western countries, yeah, it's been quite a movie this week, hey? We've seen Donald Trump and Elon Musk fall
Hmm.
out publicly in spectacular fashion, It's been, yeah, it's been wild, Jens, and I don't know. What is your guys' take on it before I gather my own thoughts and give my own thoughts and say what I have to say about the situation because yeah, there's a lot to unpack here.
I haven't followed the situation as closely, but I
Hmm.
just think it's quick. It's so funny how quickly, they went from being seemingly best buds and like super close political allies to being more seemingly mortal enemies, And I'm just not quite understanding why. It's like, but at the same time, this whole situation to me, it's another example of how there are no permanent political friends. There are no friends in politics. It's all about common interest, and ego at the same time. And when one of those things are compromised, then you're going to see a complete, I don't say dismantling, but like relations will dissolve based on those two things. If egos are damaged on either side, or if conflicts, or not conflicts, but if interests conflict, then you're gonna see like that relation sort of fall apart. But what is the actual reason though? Because as far as I know, the main issue that Trump or that put off Trump after the argument started or after the whole disagreement began was when Elon Musk brought up the whole Epstein thing and how Trump was on the flight logs, and I guess things got worse from there. But what is the initial issue exactly?
Okay, so from what I gathered, right, is that the big issue was around Trump's big, beautiful bill, right? So what this
Mm,
bill is about, from what I gather, I could be wrong about this, is the fact that Musk, Elon, stands to lose in terms of this bill because there were a lot of budget cuts that were going to be made for his subsidies because I think under Biden's administration, the electric car production was getting a lot of subsidies so that more people could be able to buy these electric vehicles. And with this big beautiful bill, Elon was stand to lose because those subsidies would be cut by Trump, you know? And
mm,
he also had a major problem on the budget, on government spending regarding that big beautiful bill. So that's where the fallout the root of the fallout has started, but I believe it's much deeper than that, you know, because there's there's the headlines that the media will give you, right? That sounds plausible. That sounds like something that we'd all want to hear or we'd all accept, right? But there's always something beneath the surface that is much more deeper than we think that is playing a role. And yeah, the fact that Trump said one thing and then Elon out of the blue accused Trump of being part of the Epstein list, like, is pretty wild because these guys went from being friends at one point, and then there was the there was the disagreement in the bill or the policy, and then all of a sudden they're at each other's throats on Twitter. So yeah, I don't know. Let's just get Musa's perspective on this and see what he thinks, and then I'll also give Raz a chance to speak.
Yeah, yo, it's actually I haven't really been paying attention to it as much, but it is disappointing to see the fallout between President Trump and Elon Musk. And, whether you agree with them or not, they both are undeniably influential figures in society.
mm,
Today is obviously doing well in politics and Elon Musk in tech and innovation. And their voices do carry a lot of weight. And when they clash publicly, it does send off ripple effects throughout society. So I think there's space for them. I do believe that there is still space for them to obviously resolve whatever's going on, and there should be space. They should allow space for them to at least have a dialogue and try and form some sort of constructive compromise or resolution of some sort, because the stakes are very high because America is the most influential country in the world. And when the two biggest personalities clash, it does concern a lot of people. And I think at the end of the day, cooler heads always prevail. And there's definitely does need to be more of an effort to encourage collaboration, partnerships, than division, especially in those positions of power. Peaceful resolutions, mutual respect. Because I initially thought that when Elon Musk left the White House, that they had mutual understanding on his departure and that it was done in good faith and that they wanted to move in different ways, but still obviously driving the impact that they're trying to push. But now for them to disagree so publicly and to threaten each other, it does cause a lot of concerns, and it will cause ripple effects because I'll give you an example. If now Elon Musk decides to go and fund the Democrats next week because he can, then what happens? Is he funding the Democrats because he believes in what they stand for, what they're doing, or is he just trying to get back at Trump? So now it becomes less about the actual work of the government, more about the personalities feuding.
mm,
So yeah, I still believe that there's a way forward, and these kinds of public spats don't necessarily help in the long term. As different as they may be, I do know or think that Trump and Musk obviously care about America's future, and maybe they need to find some sort of common ground at the very least and agree to disagree with respect and not have leaders spatting. I've never seen that kind of spat at that level, where even in South Africa, like there's a certain level of decorum that's obviously maintained. But if I'm threatening you, I mean, because I think Trump's threat to Musk now is saying, I'm going to take, the contracts away from you, the ones that the government's been funding for your projects. There's a lot of jobs at stake there. A lot of investment has gone into that. There's the mission, I think there's the SpaceX mission with the International Space Station, where if this funding is obviously gets taken away, those astronauts will be stuck. And I think SpaceX is the only company that has the capability of retrieving those people. So there's a lot at stake. So now, when a president just tweets and says, I'm going to cut your contracts, and then the other one tweets saying you're on a list, so it means that you are not ethically, you're not the right person to be in that office. So it's for it to get to that level, something definitely must have happened, like you guys are saying. But yeah, leadership needs to, leadership is about respect, it's about building bridges, and it's not really just about headlines. So hopefully they'll obviously come to a compromise and just try and put America first, especially because it's so early in the days. Trump hasn't even been in the office, I think, for over. I mean, it's just been 100 days, so it's probably less than 150 days of being in office, and there's already spats and things that are circulating in the media. So yeah, that's my point.
Drama.
Exactly. And what do you think, Raz?
I think just I want to stick a lot to Damusa's point and also circle back to your point. Okay, so this all sparked from obviously the bill, and like I'm saying, you were mentioning the fact that we're not sure what's happening behind the scenes. We're going to speak based on at least what we see. So with that being said, I think Elon Musk raised a critical point because remember, he said with his team and experts involved that listen, we don't have a problem with this bill. We just have a problem that it's going to cost us a loss of about 2.4 trillion US dollars over the next decade. And remember, the department that was established for Musk was a department to primarily assist with decreasing government expenditure. So they gave that to Trump and said, listen, man, but this is going to cost us like this. We don't think this is feasible. And then Trump raised that point of, no, you only have a problem because it's going to take about 14% of some of your shares, profits, and so forth. I'm not sure about the bickering and stuff, but we all know that Trump was assisted with over hundreds and hundreds of millions in his re-election by Musk, and Musk put him and created this department for him to ensure that he assists him, and was also an advisor at the White House. So I think Musk was coming from a good space when it was like, look, listen, this will cost us a bit too much over the next 10 years, because they first did research on that. I'm not sure then about him answering what he said. What was it the best way? I feel like they can sit down and talk about this in a more decent manner. They don't need to be throwing around punches, because what Musk is raising is valid. And at the same time, what Donald is raising is valid, saying, okay, but Musk has a problem because he's going to lose profit. Now Musk is not raising the Epstein case that, no, he doesn't want the file released because he's part of the Epstein case. So you see now this whole taking out files, taking out people's stuff with stuff that allegedly they do. I think that one's a bit, it's a bit dirty. It's a bit dirty. So I think, they should stick to finding a way to find a solution. They both grown-ups, both household names. I'm sure they can find a way to find a solution to this, like Musa was saying.
Yeah, and can I just say what this speaks to from what I'm gathering, There's also an ego issue from both sides because it feels like both of them have taken bruises from from the disagreement because at one side you have Trump who wants to implement his policies, right? And then you have Elon on the other side who is disagreeing because of the concern of overspending and the cutting of jobs and so on and so forth, which he stands to lose as well. And the fact that Trump would say something like Elon is only mad about this bill because he stands to lose X amount of money and X amount of jobs and X amount of stock from his personal standpoint. I feel like there is that narcissistic, selfish standpoint that both are basing their arguments on, and that's why we're seeing this sort of irrational move like reaction from both of them where one is saying I'm threatening to take away your contracts, the other is saying, oh no, you're on a list with a sexual offender. So it's like, okay, who do you believe now, bro? So
I
that's the thing. Yeah,
I mean, Trump was on the list. He's on those flight logs. I mean, not that it means, n- n- yeah, yeah, not that it means that Trump was doing some, dodgy things on the
we
island.
don't know
A
about
lot of
that. Let's be very
you
careful.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just that like we don't know because you being on the flight logs once isn't necessarily that big of a deal. You could have maybe been invited to some party or whatever. It was just a normal, regular, The question is how many times did he appear on the list, But that's besides the point. But it's like going back to the ego thing. It's a clash of egos. These are two of the biggest personalities on earth right now. It's Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And when they beef, of course, it's going to be like a nuclear, explosion where they're both throwing their toys out the cart now, and it's like verbal insults, and you did this and you did that, or I'm gonna threaten to do this to hurt you. So I think it's past the point of being professional at this point. Like these are two egotistical individuals, for better or for worse, but at the end of the day, these are two massive personalities, and when they come to some kind of massive disagreement, it's bound to, become like a circus, like an entertaining show that people get to watch while there's so much at stake at the very same time. Because this is the President of the United States of America, arguably the most powerful nation on earth. And then on the other end, we have the richest man on the planet, both disagreeing fundamentally about something and arguing about this publicly. So yeah, and Musa mentioned this earlier. I just worry about how this is going to affect everyday people, especially in the United States, when two highly influential people who have a direct effect on the economy are at odds like this and they're supposed to be on the same side. How is this going to affect the everyday American, and even by extension, how is it going to affect everybody else on earth? Because what happens in America is we are downstream to what happens in America, for better or for worse. So yeah, it's tense. It's
I
tense.
feel it's drama. It's drama on all sides, bro. And
Mm.
like they say in the streets, you move him, John, because I
Mm.
move really. And
Feel
speaking
you.
about beef, like in our side of town in South Africa, we have our own beef that's going on as well. We just saw Floyd getting dropped from the MK party.
Hey Floyd. Hey Floyd.
Yeah, I move, Pras.
And just let people know why. Why was Floyd cut? What happened? What did he do? I need people to hear
Okay,
this.
okay. So Floyd, right? Floyd gets fired this week as the SG, right, of MK Party, you know? He gets fired this week as the SG and has been demoted. So what I learned is that yeah, no, this doesn't look good for Floyd because what are you doing visiting Pastor Bushiri in
Bro,
Malawi?
why?
What are
For
you doing?
no.
What are you doing? Because that doesn't look good on so many levels, bro. You know? Because this is a wanted criminal, a fugitive on the run, wanted for so many allegations, from rape to money laundering to just, yeah, all types of fraud. And you are going to visit. Not that this man is in South Africa. You go to Malawi
Mm,
to go see this man and you oppose and do whatever friendly interactions with him, and then you expect for South Africans, right? To approve of that. Nah, bro. That's
mm,
that
mm.
is not it. And then what do you think? What do you think of the whole situation, Dima? Seems like you've got quite a bit to comment on.
Nah, I don't have that much. It's just funny. But I think an important detail to add is because Floyd claimed that he was there on MK party business, and
Mm.
one of the representatives of MK came out and said, "Nope, we did not send you there, bro. Like, why
Yeah, they
did you
quickly
give your
dismissed
team?"
that. Yeah, they
Yeah,
quickly dismissed
and
that.
they quickly dismissed it. And then Floyd's argument was he claimed that in some statement, some official statement from the MK party, he says that it was a fake. That I think it was the statement claiming that he went there on his own business.
Hmm.
He claims that it was a fake because he says that the letterhead on the statement itself didn't have the gold ring which the MK
Oh
party
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah.
Oksalayo, you went to Malawi to see Pastor Bushiri, the infamous
We are
Pastor Bushiri. Uyaphi? Uyofuna ntoni? Why did you claim that you are there on MK party business when your party came out and said, no, we didn't send him there? I don't know. We don't know why he went there. Uthini pa?
I don't know. What do you think of this thing, Musa?
I actually don't know. I don't know. I haven't been paying much attention, but it's not good PR on his side. Or
Mm,
maybe he thought he'd go there and people wouldn't notice, and it obviously just blew up in the wrong way. So it definitely wasn't well thought through on his side.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of risks, especially with MK trying to build credibility in society. They're trying to get voters. Elections are coming up, so any negative association could diminish those plans.
Yeah.
And SG is like the CEO of the organization. If he is directly being made guest of honor at a Bushiri church service, it does raise some serious concerns in terms
Yeah.
of, what does this man and his organization stand for? So yeah, I don't know. It actually don't.
It's
It's just,
wild, bro.
it's so
It's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah.
can I just add something because we see
Mm.
the Pastor Bushiri thing, right? And we're all in agreement that yeah, dog, like that's not the move, you know? The country, your own organization, we all agree on that. But then to unpeel another layer, right, to his dismissal is the fact that he clashed with Ututu Zuma. Is it Tutuzile or
Tutuzan, which one?
not Tutuzane, the daughter. What's the daughter's name?
Oh, Tutuzil.
Tutuzile, yeah. So he
Mm.
clashed with Ututuzile. And it got ugly, bro, because Ututuzile was cursing this man on Twitter, bro, telling, "Hey, fuck you, Floyd. Floyd, you are a small boy, basically, like
Hectic.
you are nothing, It got to that point that you pissed off like your boss's daughter, bro, to a point where she's dropping F bombs. She's dropping F bombs at you for basically the world to see that she doesn't like you. And there were also like I won't say rumors, but people was saying that Floyd was getting a bit big-headed and that he was disregarding some of the other party members who were there before him because apparently he brought in EFF members that left near the EFF and brought them to MK party and he put them in positions of power and influence, whereas there were people from Zuma's camp who were promised those positions, and then Floyd came and spoiled that party. So that's another layer that is not being discussed in depth and at length. But I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this as to it's not a good move. Like it's just common sense in any type of workspace. Like let's say I'm working for your dad, Ndima, but now I have beef with you. I'm not gonna last long in that company, you know?
Not at all.
Exactly, exactly. So what do you guys think of that? Like, what do you make of his beef with President Zuma's daughter and how that might have contributed to his dismissal?
It's more about, it's not even necessarily about his beef with Ututuzile. It's more, for me, it's like this is a brand new party,
Mm,
you know, and they're already fighting from within. Number one. Number two, my main question, not to the party, but like in terms of trying to understand what exactly is the philosophy or the ethics or what exactly does the MK party want to do? What is their mission statement? And I think, and the reason why I ask that is because in order for a party to actually be successful or to actually gain votership or to gain influence, they have to actually have some kind of mission statement. What are they trying to do for everyday South Africans? What is their end goal? And I don't think they've even established that, because each political party in this country, especially the main ones, they all
mm.
have these main tenets, like these main objectives, their mission statements, which is basically supposed to be like the glue that holds everything together. But
Yeah,
I'm not
their
seeing that from
manifesto.
the MK. Yeah, yeah, the manifesto. And I'm not seeing that from the MK party. And it only goes to show why they're disintegrating like this so early on. It's because they don't seem to have some kind of mission statement that holds them together. And
And
it
can I
kind
tell you
of
what's weird, bro? Not to cut
mm,
you off, sorry. Is that Floyd came through and built structure within the MK party and came up with the constitution. And then these
mm,
guys dropped Floyd with the same constitution he had built. Like, hey, chief, according to the constitution, le uyenzileyo, siyakhipha ke ngoku, siyakhipha. And yeah, so we talked about Floyd. I just want to get Raz's opinion and then I'll move on to Musa. Let's just move on to Musa first. Musa, what do you think of this whole thing? I know we talked about the what you call the first point of him visiting Bushiri, but what about Duduzile Zuma being in conflict with Floyd? What do you think of that? What do you make of that?
Yeah, no, I did see that on Twitter. Yeah, that on its own was also quite cinematic to see and watch. And I honestly think Duduzile Zuma should have handled that in a more professional way. But, for her to have an outburst like that, considering that she, has also been in the public and political space for quite some time now, and, obviously knowing who she is and who she represents, an outburst like that was also, quite concerning. Why would the president's daughter react in this way? What disagreement might have happened? What's this fight about? So, I think there's obviously more to the story when it comes to, Floyd, his appointment, the people involved in the MK party, the personalities involved. And yeah, I think the disciplinary committee, from what I read online, did handle the situation, in a fair way where, she was asked to apologize publicly to him because, an outburst like that also undermine Floyd's like involvement or his role as SG. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I can't say that I'm for. I mean, at the end of the day, even if Zuma is the president of the MK party and the daughter's having an outburst, it didn't really give her a right to react in that way so publicly. I felt that was very disrespectful. But at the same time, we must always remember these people know each other for some time. I think Floyd Shivambu was in the ANC Youth League with Julius Malema. Duduzile Zuma was also in the ANC Youth League at some point. I think in the KZN branch. So they know each other. So it's people that know each other, but in a different space, moving differently. And yeah, they just need to just treat these things in a more professional way. And I mean, we don't know. Maybe this whole downgrading of him or him stepping down, maybe it's unrelated to all these theories. Maybe it's something
Mm,
else, or maybe
mm,
he felt that no man, I could add, I can have a better voice in parliament as opposed to being an SG handling the internal affairs of the party, because now the municipal elections are coming up, and we do need to start seeing these municipal parties, these political parties being more active and convincing so that we can obviously vote for them. I mean, I saw today that Helen Zille is considering running for mayor of the city of Joburg as the DA's
Really
yeah, even Steve Jobs. So I
interesting.
mean, so things are a lot of movements are happening in the political sphere in preparation for the the political election next year. And I don't know, like maybe I mean I'm not a fan of Helen Zille, but I did see what she did in the city of Cape Town. And when she was mayor and premier, whoever's gonna be compete if she does end up running, whoever's gonna be competing against her needs to really have their ducks in the row, because she's got a track record to support
Mm.
her running or her ticket. So a lot of these political movements and things are being influenced by there's obviously a goal or an objective that everyone's behind, and it seems like it's the 2026 municipal elections, which are actually around the corner.
interesting
But yeah,
point.
back to Floyd, and yeah, I don't know, just they should have just handled that whole thing offline. It's actually another Trump and Musk sort of thing, but at a local level.
Basically.
Just be more professional, guys. Let's send an email. Let's speak to the HR person. Yeah, like don't not start swearing at people on a public platform.
But James, we already see how these people speak to each other in Parliament. I mean, are we really surprised by this? You know,
That's
we've
another thing, hey?
I think it just speaks to I think it's just a culture of the way we interact with each other in this country, especially when it comes to not us, let me not say us, but I mean the way politicians engage each other in this country. I think it's just another example of how there's very little decorum when there's disagreement. It's verbal insults, it's ad hominems. It's like these are our leaders. These are supposed to be people who are setting the example, and yet here they are having Twitter beefs. It's like, where are we? Are these the people who expect to be chosen by us as potential leaders? Are we supposed to take these people seriously when they're beefing on Twitter and they're throwing insults at each other like it's high school? It's like it doesn't shock me, to be honest.
Yeah, it's the whole outrage culture that's
Mm.
part of social media. Raz, what do you think of this Duduzile and Floyd situation regarding to his ultimate dismissal as the SG?
I think what Musa was saying is critical in this because with politicians, especially in South Africa, you're never sure what's really happening because we could be getting one piece of information and so much more is happening in the background. So, and these guys sit together. Remember, you guys have coffee together and they have meetings. Anyway, so, we see these people fight, ANC, TA, and so forth, but these people sit together and make proposals and write bills and sign off legislation. So, ultimately, in this case, okay, number one, when we look at the situation of him going to Prophet Bushira, I laughed when I saw that. Yo, I laughed because I was like, you know what? Because I didn't think something like this could actually lead to such a dismissal. All right. However, when I saw what the MK party said, it made sense. Obviously, the MK party saying he didn't get authority to do that, even though he did say on his side he did. So obviously, going against protocol and in any business or in any organization, there's protocol. I respect their decision, obviously, to say you don't follow process, and also the thing with Uzuma's daughter. But with that one, you see, it's a combination of all your guys' points because now, number one, the way she spoke to him wasn't right. We all know that. However, at the same time, this is still Zuma's daughter, so we can say, okay, she was wrong. But I mean, if you're a father and your daughter's wrong, you'd still, if someone says something or does something to her in a certain way, you still get touched because it's your daughter. Because let's take politics out. Let's take his relationship with Floyd out, and realize that it's still his daughter. So he will have a certain type of way he would want it to be treated. And I mean, I don't think if that wasn't Zuma's daughter, maybe this would have been treated in that way. So I mean, yeah, man, that's the thing with like Musa was saying though, South African politics. You don't know what's really happening. Did Floyd maybe say to them, look, let me rather go to Parliament and go and assist there for the elections and run with the municipal? Because Floyd is very good on the municipal level. Also, he's very good. So I never know, man. It's a great area. But ultimately, is it wrong for him to be dismissed? Look, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know, bro. To be honest with you, I don't know because it's half and half. He didn't follow protocol. That's correct, but I feel like they could have spoken about it. Something they could have spoken about because now you know what this is creating. Now this is creating more distrust in the NK. Already people had issues and were not trusting the organization and they're not trusting certain factions. Since they're such a young political party, people were very concerned that are they actually strong enough? Do they have proper leaders? People have been complaining that most of their leaders are involved in fraud cases and so forth. So now when this happens again, because I'm sure there are people starting to get some form of belief in the MK, this then dismantles that again because people now asking themselves questions. So there seems to be a lot of structural fights within the MK. I hope they sort that out, man. I hope they sort that out.
Yeah, nah, there's a lot going on in the world right now, gents. But on a lighter note, man, I know Calvin Momo dropped a phenomenal album this past weekend, and it's broken some records, it's shifting the culture, and people are talking about it, man. And I know Raz and Dima, who are avid fans of Amapiano and who are well versed in Calvin's work, have quite a bit to talk about. And so I'll just leave it to you guys for now.
So, to be honest, I haven't listened to the entire thing, but I will say so
Mm.
far I was quite impressed. I think compared to his previous works, I feel like this album takes its time a bit more, but it's not so much a groove Mapiano album in any way, I don't think. It feels like it's much softer, it's much more melodic, it feels more introspective in my opinion. And as far as I've listened to it, my favorites in that first portion of the album so far have got to be Imvula, Take Me to the River, and Imhlabeni. I love those three joints very much right now. But I'm still listening to the rest of it, but not to criticize the album before I've listened to the whole thing, but I feel like I'm getting the feeling that this may not be as exciting of an album from Momo as previous works, but I'm enjoying it so far. I really, really am. At this point, I think Kelvin can't miss. I think you'd have to try very, very hard to drop something lackluster at this point. He's trailblazing in the industry. It's crazy. But at the same time, his work ethic is seriously, seriously impressive because I think he puts out an album every few months almost at this point. And it's like who in this country has ever done that? Who in this industry, no matter what genre you're talking about, what artist in this country has ever put out work back to back like Kelvin? You'd have to point someone out to me because I genuinely can't think of anyone. But so far I'm enjoying the album. I don't know what you think, Russ.
Now that album was beautiful, man. For me, that album was beautiful. I actually cried while listening to that album, no cap. I
Really?
swear, because I told myself, I'm like, you know what, let me listen to this album and give it some time. And you know, when you're given an album listening session, you put
Mm,
all your energy into it. So I listened to it from track one, and bro, I feel like Calvin is such a mature artist. And it goes back to like artists like Black Coffee, for instance. Black Coffee has always made a sound that's more mature and not really your commercial sound. All right, not looking for the sound that we
mm,
always play in clubs and so forth. And they've asked Black Coffee many years that, listen, bro, why haven't you chosen to go the commercial side? And you just always went this kind of like deep, tech and all that. And he was like, listen, bro, this is the sound that I feel like satisfies my soul, and this is the type of music I want to project to the public. So I feel like when I look at Momo was that
mm,
type of person, because I actually looked. He was saying that when he entered the game, he was assisted by Kabza. And Kabza the Small
mm,
told him that, listen, bro, you moving with this certain type of piano sound and don't change it. Don't try to be commercial. Stick to this. And that's where the whole private school piano came out. And then he dropped Ivy League. And Ivy League also,
mm.
that was Major League DJ saying to, listen, you've now reached the Ivy League. Let's put that on and move with that sound. So I think from since then, Calvin's just moved with that mature, more jazzy melodies. Or not trying to he isn't piano, but the
Mm.
more softer side of the piano, more cultural, more spiritual type of sound. And my favorite tracks in the album were Who's In with his girlfriend, Baba Alwa. Also the one with
Mm.
Satrill,
They're
Mshabing.
still together.
Well, it seems like it because they were performing yesterday or 2 days back at the Red Bull.
Mm.
Yeah, and he was hearing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like they're still together as far as I know. Yeah, or I don't know
Mm.
X, but yeah, it seemed.
Yeah. No, no, because the only reason I asked is because they make a really good musical duo. I don't care about their relationship, but like when they work together, like Ubabalo is an incredible vocalist. Like her voice works really well with Mapiano, especially with private school Mapiano. But I just wanted to ask Raz, if you had to compare, since you've listened to the whole album, prefer, or which do you like more between Ntsako and Tatu Yamodim, the two albums? Which one do
Just
you
remind
like
me the
more?
one with the green cover. Is Kurula? Kurula's not with the red cover. Kurula has the red cover. What's the other one before? What's that album before Kurula?
The green
No, no,
one is Amukelani.
I'm okay, line dog for me.
yeah,
That's my
Ntsako
best.
is the
Oh, Swako. Oh, I checked.
mm,
Swako. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because Ntsako is the one just before this one
Yeah.
from 2024.
That's a tough question, but you know what, bro, I'll take it. I'll go with thing, bro. Swako, bro. Swako, bro.
Mm.
I'll still go in Swako.
Same. I agree. There's so many bangers there. So many. It's crazy.
But you know, like just to quick, what you were saying. Do you know that Ubaba can't really work with like other artists like that? They were saying like I forgot two other guys and Calvin. What going back to what you're saying, those are the only people that are able to understand Ubaba and make music. Besides that, she can't. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the whole private school sound, Kelvin, I think other than Baba Alwa, it's Baba Alwa, Tato Hatsi, and Tracy. Those three vocalists work extremely well on Kelvin's music, to the point where I think their voices have kind of become like in my opinion, they've kind of become like the unofficial standard sound or vocal sound or the standard vocal feminine sound for Mapiano. To the point where it's like I
Yeah,
can't hear any other kind of vocal style in that private school style of Mapiano other unless I'm hearing either Baba Alwa, Tato Hatsi, or Tracy. Those three vocalists in particular. But yeah, me personally,
those
so
three
far,
vocalists are fire, bro.
yeah. So far, Mnantsako for me is still superior. But if the album picks up the heat when I listen to it later, like at that halfway point, then I'll consider it. But for now, Ntsako took it for me, bro. Like incredible album.
Mm. But that's the thing you see with music,
Very
bro.
insightful.
Just a quick one. That's the thing with music. So we listen to it now and we're like, okay, maybe there's still a few that are a bit better. But, you might look at it 10 years from now and be like, shit, now I get what he was trying to say, bro. Because some things hit years later, bro. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
True.
100%. And have you listened to the album Moose? Is Musa still with us? What's going on? Musa. Okay, no worries. Nah, no worries then. Like music, it's one of those like you guys are saying when it comes to comparing albums, like
Sorry, James, I was just held up. No, I haven't listened to the album.
oh my
Sorry,
God. Yeah,
no, I haven't listened to the new album. I was just seeing a lot of reaction on Twitter and on TikTok. Um, but I haven't actually. Just my piano moves like AI. Like it just moves so fast. It's like one day we have a certain playlist, and then next week there's a new algorithm, and if you're not on it, you're not on it. So it just shows you the power of the genre, and just how successful it's really made a lot of these
Mm.
artists in a short space of time, made them international acts, and given them opportunities to go abroad. It's really something that is worth learning about, quite deeper, even from above the actual, the music, the mechanics of the industry itself. How much value has Amapiano added for Spotify sales and Apple Music, these various streaming services. So it's definitely interesting to see these guys really pivot and make the most of the genre. I think a few years ago we were only exposed to like Durban House and Kwaito and all that, and back then it felt like that genre at the time was like there was nothing that could surpass that. And just seeing what Calvin Momo, Kabza, Uncle Waffles, and them are just doing, they're just constantly pushing boundaries, and it's really nice to watch, and just learn from.
Percent, bro.
But I haven't listened to any of the albums, but I will, based off
Mm.
Uramutsi's input and Ndima's inputs. I'm actually gonna, yeah, I'm gonna give it a listen during the week.
Yeah, I'm also gonna tap in. I haven't really listened to the album, and which is funny because I was the one who was advocating for Amapiano last week. But yeah, moving on to sports, since you guys gave a very brilliant take on both sides, I'll commend you for that, you know. Football season ended, you know. Tonight is the UEFA, it's actually playing right now, the UEFA Nations League final between Spain and Portugal. Yeah, Portugal beat Germany 2-1 over the week, you know. Cristiano scored. Also, I forget the guy's name, but Portugal came from behind to win that 2-1. And then France and Spain put on a 9-goal thriller where Spain won 5-4. They won emphatically up until, you know, Spain was 3-0 up in the first half, and then it was 5-2 at some point, and then France just came back and made it a game, and it ended at 5-4. So who do you guys think will win the final, and why do you think so? If you've tuned in to what's been happening.
Dude, you talking about the final today, man?
Yeah, it's like happening right
Yeah,
now
yeah, true. Because
between
it's
Spain and
Spain
Portugal.
and Portugal. I think okay. I think for this one, I'll give it to Portugal.
Hmm.
Currently, Portugal's putting in a good effort, dude. And you saw the last few matches.
Yeah,
They're really trying to up the gear a bit. So I think the fact that they're in the final, it's like kind of like the PSG and Inter Milan final, dude. I feel like Portugal wants this more than Spain. I feel
wants the
like
ball in
Portugal's more
Spain.
hungry
Yeah,
for this cock, yeah. So I think they'll take it.
yeah, I think so too. I also give Portugal the edge, but based on what I've seen from Spain lately, bro, these guys are insane. These guys are
Is
playing insane
Hey,
football.
but
They
yeah,
are
dog, yeah,
cohesive. Lamine
yo,
Yamal is dangerous,
yeah,
bro.
man. In fact,
Lamine
yeah,
Yamal
nah.
is dangerous. Lamine Yamal is
That
dangerous.
kid,
Nico
bro.
Williams. Nico Williams also is dangerous. Their defense is sound. Their midfield. You've got Moreno as well, who plays like a false nine, kinda striker, but is also a striker. Like the Spanish team was dangerous, bro. They last year they won the Euro, you know. And yeah, like I don't know, hey, like I give Portugal the edge, but hey, dog, that Spanish team is dangerous, bro. And it speaks a lot like for the World Cup going forward for next year because everything now is building up for next year's World Cup. So it's going to be very interesting to see the power dynamic in terms of European football and world football because ultimately this is just a preview, you know, of the showcase for next year. And then we've got the NBA finals as well. Do you guys follow basketball or should I take this one?
Nah, I do not.
Yeah, no, I don't
Mm-hmm.
follow. You
Okay,
take it.
so yeah, it's a very interesting final, chance because to give you a bit of context, both these teams, yeah, like it's going to be historic for both of them because it's going to be the first time these teams win an NBA championship in this current era of basketball. You know, you have on the one side the Indiana Pacers, who were three-time champions in the previous format, you know, before it became the NBA. And then on the other side, you have the OKC Thunder, who last won the championship in 1979 when they were not the OKC Thunder, but the Supersonics, the Seattle Supersonics. And it's an evenly matched final in terms of these two teams aren't big market teams like your Los Angeles Lakers, your Boston Celtics, or your New York Knicks, you know. These are teams that built their organization and their team from the ground up. They recruited a lot of youth through the NBA draft, you know. And so now they've built both of these teams and they've come together and they've been I mean OKC has been dominant the entire season, right? But the Pacers on the other side, they've come to click on they've clicked at the right time and they've caused a lot of upsets. And what's also great about the NBA finals is that it's not just one game being played. It's a series of 7 games. So whoever reaches 4 wins first wins the championship. And people are expecting OKC to win. They are the favorites to win. But what's shocking now is that the Pacers have stolen game one in OKC's territory, you know? So it's the Pacers are leading the series 1-0 up, and game two is tonight or this morning at 2 a.m. And yeah, it's a cracker, James, because with OKC you have the MVP, right, who has a point to prove. But then on the Pacers side, you have their point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, who's been called overrated. But this guy literally won the game for the Pacers. Like it was such a dramatic win. Like he literally made the winning shot in the last second, you know. The score was 109 to 108. 109, yeah, 109 to 108. OKC was leading by 1 point, and then literally in the last second, Tyrese Halliburton makes the game-winning shot in OKC's home ground. So yeah, and it takes a lot for an away team to win in another team's home turf, because you're playing 2 games here before you go back to your home turf to play 2 games on your home turf. So there's a lot. It's a very competitive series, and yeah, I'm leaning more towards OKC's to win, but the fact that the Indiana Pacers won game one and stole home court advantage blows the series like wide open, bro. And it's very hard to tell who's going to win right now. And I just hope it goes to 7 games, but you just never know. So that's what makes this series exciting.
Interesting. Yeah, no, me, I don't know anything about
Very
basketball,
interesting.
but but like I just have a question, like what are some of the top NBA teams right
hmm
now? As in if we're gonna talk about top five.
Top five right now is the both teams playing in the
Mm,
final, OKC and the Indiana Pacers. And then you've got, let me see, from the East, you can say the Boston Celtics because they were the champions,
mm,
but they got dethroned by the New York Knicks. So they didn't make the conference finals. They got eliminated in the conference semifinals by the New York Knicks. So you'd say New York, yeah, so you'd say New York Knicks, the Indiana Pacers, like right now as we speak. And then you've got Oklahoma City Thunder, and then you also have the Minnesota Timberwolves. So those are the semifinalists, right? And then number five, who would I say? I'd say the Boston Celtics because they were the
mm,
champions, before they got dethroned. So I'd say those are the top five teams right now. And these are relatively, except for the Boston Celtics, like small market teams. So they aren't your LA Lakers. Like the only big market team there is like the New York Knicks. So it's the competition in the NBA right now is it's very equal. There's a lot of parity because back then you had LeBron's Cavaliers and Steph Curry's Golden State Warriors who were in the final almost
mm,
every year. But then after 2019, when Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors won the championship, that sort of changed. You've seen since 2019, there's been a different champion every year.
got you.
So there's going to be another different champion this year as well, and it's going to be historic because both these teams haven't won an NBA championship in this era of basketball since the league was converted to the NBA. So it's very
Mm,
interesting.
got you.
Very interesting, very interesting. And on the UFC side, is there anything that's been going on?
I mean, like I said last episode, I'm just looking forward to the Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria fight. But then there's also an upcoming bout between Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley. So that is also something I'm looking forward to.
hmm
I think Joaquin's got this because he's on a winning streak. Ever since he moved up a weight class. Maru, I would have put my money on Kamaru Usman if this was him maybe 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. But
Yeah.
he's one of those fighters who's past his prime. His knees are like severely injured. I don't see him winning this, but at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if he could win maybe by decision. but my money's on Joaquin Buckley. Yeah. But yeah, also there's been a bit of a development with women's UFC. Recently, we had a UFC fight between who was it again? The current women's featherweight champion. But what I'm getting at is that Amanda Nunes, who was the reigning champ for like a long time, she came out of retirement to sort of spice things up again. She came back to kind of bring a bit more competition into women's UFC, which is good. And so I'm keeping my eye on that right now. But yeah, currently it's the Topuria versus Oliveira and Joaquin Buckley versus Usman fight that I'm definitely looking forward to right now. There's a few fights in the UFC that I look forward to, but yeah, those for sure right now.
I'm sure those will be thrilling. And how are you feeling about Man City these days, Moose?
Yo, picking on Man City. Yeah, it's been a tough season. Yeah, I don't know. I think from the business of soccer, it's definitely they do need to reconsider their strategy, especially in yeah, in terms of the results this season. Yeah, they would need to go back to the drawing board and just fix things from that perspective. But I'm confident next season will yield a lot of results, positive results. I did read about them selling or moving players around, loaning players. I think Grealish might get loaned out. De Bruyne's getting old, so he's been sold. Walker's still on loan, and I think they might bring in some new guys in the midfield to just help highlight on the front. And obviously, Rodri is the key asset at the moment. But you can't build a club around one player, so it is important to obviously start getting the younger players in to emulate a Rodri of some sort. Because yeah, I mean when Rodri's out of action, things just go south, which
Yeah.
isn't a good sign. And if you notice, that's always been the trend with Man City. I think even during Yaya Toure's period, if he was out, the club would actually the team would struggle. During Toure's time. After Toure, it was De Bruyne, and De Bruyne sort of took over from Toure, and now Rodri's taken over from De Bruyne and Silva, and Silva, and I forget that guy's name, but the guy that moved to Barcelona and then came back. Yeah,
Gundogan, yeah.
Gundogan, I think. Yeah,
Gundogan, dog.
Gundogan.
Gundogan.
That's how you pronounce his surname, dog.
Gundogan.
Yes.
I think he's German. Yeah, I think he's German.
It's German, man, but
So yeah,
Gundogan.
there definitely needs to be something. Something needs to happen there. But I mean, it's nice to see that other clubs coming up as well. I see that HSV got promoted in the Bundesliga,
Hmm.
which was quite nice to see. I'm not sure who won Serie A.
Holy dog. That's where
Napoli.
KDB is
Okay,
going.
that's
Moving to
cool. And then
Napoli,
in
yeah.
La Liga, did Madrid win? Or
Oh, not dog.
after okay,
Barcelona
okay,
won the
Riza,
treble.
okay,
They won the Super Copa, the Copa del Rey. They won the La Liga. They've been on top of Real Madrid this entire season. They've got a
that's
brilliant coach with
crazy.
with Hansi Flick, the guy who coached Bayern Munich and won them the Champions League in 2020. And then he moved from Bayern Munich to Germany, and then he didn't do too well on the German side, the national team. So he got dropped from there, and then Barcelona recruited him a while back. And yeah, bro, they've been rolling since he's been there. You've seen the
Yeah,
revelation of Lamine Yamal. Rafinha has been amazing. You've got Pedri as well. Szczesny at the goal has also been phenomenal for them, a very important piece. So they back in action, bro, and they made the semi-final in the Champions League, which they lost to Inter Milan. So they've been sensational this season.
yeah. Okay, now I'm gonna look it up. Look it up.
And then what do you guys think of Tottenham firing their head coach who won them their first major trophy in like 17 years, bro?
I don't know, man. I think maybe they felt like it's still not up to where they feel like they want to see themselves. Because you can see Tottenham is still trying to gun for the Premier League. They're still trying to gun for Champions League. They're still trying to be at the top. They're
Hmm.
on Man City level, Chelsea level, Man U level. Well, okay, Man U and Chelsea this season are not so great, but
I
yeah,
was
like
about to
now
say,
the
what do you mean
season.
by Man U
But
level?
you catch the drift. So I think for
Yeah,
them it was that thing of okay, you won the trophy, but look, this is not fully what we want, so you're still not meeting target. Because these coaches can give you targets. So
yeah, the league performance
yeah,
was
so they're
terrible.
like, nah, you don't
Yeah.
meet the target, so no. I don't know if I don't think it's a bad thing. I feel like obviously if he won the cup and they still dismissed him, I think he probably didn't meet the objectives that they had.
Nah, like I find it pretty wild, bro, because this guy wins you your first major trophy in 17 years, a European competition, and he gets you, by virtue of that, he books you a spot in the Champions League, you know, which Tottenham lost, probably saw in 2019 or 2020. So you give a guy like that the benefit of the doubt, bro, regardless of what happened during the Premier League, because they also had a lot of injuries, and there's a reason why they didn't perform so well in the Premier League, and the guy was cognizant of that, and he took the pragmatic route in terms of trying to secure a Champions League place and win a trophy, because that's what he said he came to do. He usually wins a trophy in his second season, and he stuck to that. But maybe there's some other factors we all don't know about behind the scenes, and we're just seeing things on a surface level. But yeah, I'm not for the move, honest. I don't support Tottenham Hotspur, but like I feel for the fans, bro. It's like, dude, WTF, you know?
But that's the
And
thing, though. That's what
mhm,
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's always that case in the Premier League where coaches are
yeah,
dismissed, and as fans or as the general public, we still feel like that this person was doing, a better job, but they're still like, no, out. It happens in Man U. It
yeah.
happens a lot. I don't know.
I think we lost Raz there.
They lost me.
Yeah, no, go ahead, talk, bro.
No, no, no. I was just saying, I don't know. It's this point that you're raising that coaches, it's not just him. Like previous coaches in other clubs in
Yeah,
the Premier League do get dismissed. However, they're doing quite well or better than where the club was prior to that person being
yeah,
appointed. So I don't know, man.
yeah. It is a common trend in the Premier League more than any other leagues. Like you do see that kind of thing happening, and I think we can wrap this episode up like this, gents. It's been an amazing episode, very insightful. Also brought a different flavor with our first guest. Musa, thank you very much for joining us once again. And if there's nothing else the gents want to talk about, remember to follow us on not another pod underscore double underscore not another pod on Instagram and TikTok. We're also on Facebook, not another podcast. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the flip side. And take care this week, man. Go to the gym, tell your loved ones you love them, and yeah, man, just try to be happy.
Until the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
man.
you, gents. It was good.
It's a
It was
Till
a
the
good
next
time.
one. Aware, cheese. Aware.